What makes these little freaks so unnerving? Is it the 8 legs, maybe the 8 eyes, the fangs, the hair? Well, yes to all of those things. The human brain sees spiders as unnatural and alien. The same way we find snakes slithering unnerving, we find spiders unnerving. They're just weird. But at least they're small, right? Before we begin, this list is going to grab from all different mediums of fiction, so if there's any I forgot, let me know below, and hey, while you're down there, maybe click those 2 buttons. Thanks in advance. I am Dave, let's get to it. Number 10, Colossal Finger Creeper. These things remind me of Sid's toys from Toy Story 1. Finger creepers are severed hands that scuttle around like spiders in the lands between. Enter the Colossal Finger Creeper.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks.
1 hand with 10 fingers, although it might be more accurate to call them legs. This is legendary creature design. From Software built on an existing and unsettling severed hand character trope and turned it into something just horrible that you can't look away from. Now, the origins of Demented Master Hand are cryptic at best. Many people believe that these spiders in spirit are connected to the nearby frozen giant corpses that are all conveniently missing hands. Checks out, makes sense. But then some people think that they're the severed hands of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, the God-devouring serpent, who either chopped off or cloned his hands and then placed them at several points of interest. What? Yeah, Elden Ring's a weird game. Lastly, do you remember being in art class and trying to draw a hand? Getting the finger proportions right and then making them symmetrical was impossible for me, so I gotta commend From Software. There's an insane amount of work that goes into designing these fluid animations, and I hope they never make a version with feet. Number 9.
Cathak Tarasu.
Cathak Tarasu is one of the old gods threatening Japan in survival horror game World of Horror. The character you play as is constantly moving between strange encounters in the town of Shiokawa, balancing risk and reward to solve mysteries and unlock what's in the lighthouse. Because cosmic horror loves lighthouses. Meanwhile, Cathak Tarasu is just chilling in a dark corner of the universe, finally freed from its cocoon prison and advancing on your location. As the ancient arachnid approaches, the spiders in the town become more aggressive, spinning more webs, rounding up larger prey, and giving you more spider-related events to deal with. Should you fail in your quest to unlock and summit the lighthouse, the entire town gets put into cocoons, and you wait for your organs to be liquefied from Cathak Tarasu's venom. But you could be in there for days, months, even years, in complete darkness and isolation. I think that's sick. I think I'm sick. World of Horror is what happens if you put H.P. Lovecraft and Junji Ito into a blender. I love Cathak Tarasu's art direction, and really all of World of Horror's art direction for that matter. It feels threatening and impossible, and that makes me want to explore more and uncover the mystery. And if you know anything about Lovecraft, that means you're probably gonna die. Number 8. Another name I have to Google. Kumonga? How to pronounce kumonga? I assume so. Kumonga. This is trouble. 1 star on this pronunciation bot. Well. Number 8. Kumonga from Son of Godzilla. So I'm really glad that I stumbled onto the 1967 film Son of Godzilla from legendary kaiju originator Toho. Because the antagonist, our boy Kumonga, looks amazing for the time. Nearly 60 years old, and Kumonga just continuing to illuminate the timeless splendor of practical effects. And on the other side, we have the Son of Godzilla, Manila. This thing is a travesty. I've never hated anything this much in my entire life. I hate that thing. What happens in Son of Godzilla is normal kaiju hijinks. This microwaved Ninja Turtle kicks a boulder into a valley, and that happens to be where Kumonga is sleeping. I wanted to bring this one up because the behind-the-scenes work required to bring this ageless beauty to life is pretty sick. Anytime Kumonga was just by himself in a scene, they would use a little mini puppet, make it easier on the set. But, in fight scenes and really any moment involving smooth Reptar, they had to have a 15-foot model that the crew would puppeteer from up in the studio rafters. They actually needed every single non-actor or director on set to go up in the rafters just to work the thing. That's a lot of people in a tight space, hot air rises, not very well ventilated. You probably imagine that's pretty hot. You have no idea. Because the studio lights apparently gave off such an intense heat that the crew's sweat poured down like rain. There was just a little cloud that followed Kumonga. Number 7. Weavers. Multidimensional, hyper-intelligent spiders with human hands. You want to make spiders scarier? Give them thumbs. I don't like the idea of giving any animals thumbs. That seems like the same threat level as AI to me. Weavers are able to see, traverse across, and manipulate the fabric of space and time as easily as normal spiders interacting with their own web. Weavers are telepaths that communicate in half-poetry riddles. It's said that their consciousness and subconsciousness are one, and that they're constantly dreaming. And something I really like about this characterization is apparently they're always mad blabbering. Like, these dudes never stop yapping. They are speaking every second they're alive, but they choose when they want to be audible. That sort of makes me think of the Joker. You've got these unpredictably dangerous yappers that just everything up for no apparent reason. There's one scene where the Weavers show up, take everybody's left ear, then they disappear. And a week later, in the local paper, there's a thank you note from the Weavers. They also do some good in the series, but at the end of the day, these spiders have thumbs, and that means that they can use tools. You know how to make spiders with thumbs scarier? Make them spiders with scissors.
Hey, turn that shit off.
So that's what it takes for you to notice me, Dad?
Jason, what are you doing here?
Susan and we're getting married. We're newlyweds.
Number 6. Black Tiger from Resident Evil 1. This is easily the most upsetting depiction of a spider on this list. Unless you count Choo Choo Charles from the intro, that thing is strange. But yeah, I think if you have arachnophobia, this is probably the hardest one to stomach, but that's why it's here. It's so well rendered that the added realism makes it feel like a tactile threat. I mean, this thing could be in your basement right now. This thing could be behind you in the corner of your room right now. This thing is behind you in the corner of your room. The spider's in your room. Black Tiger has no fun lore or interesting characterization or dimensional properties. It's just a big-ass spider, which is surprisingly restrained for this franchise. If you've played any Resident Evil games, you know that they are excellent at spectacle boss fights, and lots of times these bosses share characteristics with animals. Now that I'm thinking about it, Resident Evil 1 is surprisingly grounded. You've got Spider Boss, Shark Boss, Snake Boss, which is in massive contrast to the enemies you battle in the last third-person mainline game, Resident Evil 6, which is an underrated game. And so is 5. On to the next one.
In worlds seen and unseen,
where spirits are transformed and sorcerers rule.
Spirited Away.
Coming at number 5, we have Kamaji from Spirited Away. If you haven't seen Spirited Away, you should. And if you go, nah, that's not my thing, that's cool. When you have kids, you should watch it with them. I imagine lots of people my generation remember the parents turning into pigs scene the same way that I remember watching Cartoon Network a little too late at night, and then the Full Metal Alchemist Chimera searing into my young impressionable noodle. Kamaji is a man spider, and he's based off of a race of spider-like creatures from Japanese mythology called the Sushi... I didn't prepare for this. How do you pronounce that? An ad? This is not a free service. Kamaji is a man spider, and he's based off of the race of spider-like creatures from Japanese mythology called the Tsushigamo. Most of Spirited Away takes place in a bathhouse, and within that bathhouse, Kamaji is the straw that stirs the drink. He runs the boiler room, and is responsible for heating all of the baths. But like everything with Studio Ghibli, he's a bit more nuanced than you might think. From what I can tell, aside from representing a race of spider-like creatures, Tsushigamo is also a derogatory term used for local Japanese clans who did not show allegiance to the emperor. These clans are said to have resided underground, pretty similar to how our boy Kamaji resides in the cellar of the bathhouse. Contrast this with Yubaba, the film's antagonist and proprietor of the bathhouse. Yubaba lives on the highest floor of the bathhouse. She wants everything extravagant and luxurious, while she herself is quite greedy and abusive to her workers. Yubaba makes it a point to strip the identity from all of her workers and force them into a strict work, eat, work, sleep, work schedule. So just to recap, they could have depicted Kamaji however they wanted to. They could have made him anything, but they chose to make him a Tsushigamo, which also has a double meaning as like a local Japanese person who resists a greater either political or maybe socioeconomic force. And that's what I think Spirited Away is getting at. I think that they're hinting at the effect that capitalism has had on Japan, depicting the old ways as unfortunately relegated to the basement, to the cellar, while still being like the foundation of what's propping up the country. The Tsushigamo is doing hard, honest work, and is really the only thing keeping the bathhouse going, while Yubaba, which is sort of the new wave of 1900s capitalism, profits off of customers and workers alike. Maybe I'll do a separate Ghibli video one day, but for now I think this is our stop. Number 4, The Metal Queen. I like this thing. The Metal Queen has undoubtedly the stupidest lore of all time. Your character, Eddie, has a love interest named Ophelia. Ophelia becomes gravely injured by some razor fire boars, and the only man who can save her is named Killmaster. And he saves her by playing the bass, but her wounds are too deep for his bass. So you go to the Metal Queen, you kill her, and you use her silk to make stronger strings for Killmaster's bass so he can heal Ophelia from the razor fire boars.
Awesome.
This is some Greek myth logic. Now, this game, Brutal Legend, was developed by Double Fine Studios, the same team that did the Psychonauts games. And that makes it easier for me to buy into the overt silliness as a self-aware camp.
What is it?
I mean, your character is voiced by Jack Black.
Decapitation! There. I'm Steve.
And you fight the Metal Queen with a weapon called the Face Melter. It's kinda awesome. Awesome. I also wanted to mention the Metal Queen on this list as a surrogate for Shelob, the giant spider from Lord of the Rings. There's a different creepy crawly from Lord of the Rings that I want to discuss, but Shelob is too important to not mention, so the Metal Queen is her stand-in. Mainly for how similar the boss design mechanics between the Metal Queen and the Shelob battle in the 2003 Lord of the Rings Return of the King game are. Aside from the overwhelming atmosphere similarities, they both spawn mass amounts of little spiders to overwhelm you. Or try to overwhelm you at least. You know what? There's only so many ways that a spider can attack you. I mean, even Rom from Bloodborne does that, and he's more of a pill bug. Honorable mentions. 2 quick ones, and I'll make it brief. 1, the armored spider from the breathtaking Demon's Souls remake done by Blue Point Studios, and that's a studio that you need to have on your radar. And the second honorable mention is the 1962 science fiction novel Hot House. Hot House has space spiders that string webs from the Earth to the moon. They're 1 mile in length in Earth's atmosphere, but much, much larger in the pressureless vacuum of space. Oh, and they're not actually spiders, but plants shaped like spiders that spin webs of vegetable fiber. Back to the list, we have number 3. It. Robert Gray, the Eater of Worlds, the Dairy Disease. This is my favorite villain in all of literature, Pennywise the Dancing Clown. For those unfamiliar with the writings of Stephen King, including It, he has an interesting cosmology that connects the entirety of his works into the same universe, or rather the same multiverse. See, in King's books, there's a handful of impossibly strong beings that make infrequent cameos in random books just to remind you, yeah, that dog looks pretty mean, or yeah, there are children in that corn, but I'm way worse. For example, we have Maturin the Turtle, a giant space turtle who had a stomach ache and vomited out the entire universe. We also have the Dark Tower, an obelisk that exists between nothing and everything, at the center of all possible universes. Plus a few other big nasty bad dudes that I just don't want to spoil. And then we have Pennywise. And if you've only seen the movie, you have no idea how gnarly this dude really is. He's not actually a clown. It's a lot more complicated. Pennywise is actually a multi-dimensional eldritch form of energy known as the Deadlights. These come from the space between dimensions and are often depicted as these writhing, mysterious orange lights that a mere glance is enough to make someone go permanently insane or even catatonic. So why is he on this list? Well, we know Pennywise is way closer to a Lovecraftian being than an arachnid, so why is he depicted as a spider? Well, because that's the closest thing to its physical form that the human mind can conceive. And this sort of incomprehensible cosmic horror is impossible for the film to depict, but these artist renditions do a really great job of capturing just how fucking terrifying Pennywise really is. Fun fact, he also appears as a truck, a giant bird, and Bruce, the shark from Jaws.
Tempo has reached critical level.
Number 2, Octopod Octopod from
Super Cyborg.
This is a deep cut. Super Cyborg is a neat little game that executes one ingenious design decision that has really stuck with me. You come up on this little room, boss fight, no worries. Delete that boss, and once you're done, the real boss fight begins. Plenty of games have bosses with multiple phases, and that's essentially what this is, but I like the way the bait and switch adds flavor. It makes sense in this world. It's a little bit of that environmental storytelling. And when you fight this insectoid monster, if you're not paying attention, you won't even notice it's entangled in a web. And then the boss spider descends and you realize, oh, whoa, so, but there's a web. You're in it, you know what's so, but the bubble just got. We never know on it. It's a simple moment, but it adds color to the experience. You'll sometimes see this where games will hype up an enemy only to introduce a greater enemy at the last moment that smacks the first one out of the way, both for comedic effect and to raise the stakes. It's very small, but creative, and that's the kind of thing we like here. This is going to be so much fun to edit. Okay, UNGOLIANT. The OG. UNGOLIANT is the coolest giant spider in fiction. A primordial chaos that's older than the world itself. Half eldritch abomination, half giant spider. Eats matter, vomits darkness, killed the predecessors to the sun and moon. UNGOLIANT is just another example of Tolkien's masterful ability to hint at the indescribable. UNGOLIANT joins the likes of Tom Bombadil and the Nameless Things as mysterious abnormalities that fans love to theorize over. Before the events of Lord of the Rings, UNGOLIANT captured Morgoth, otherwise known as Sauron's master, and it took several Balrogs just to free him from her. Keep in mind that one of these things was enough to kill Gandalf, and yet they needed multiple just to beat UNGOLIANT in a tower defense game. I think this comment summarizes the eight-legged terror the best. Where did it come from? No one's sure. Why is it here? Oh, it just has an all-consuming hunger that was piqued by eating the trees of light, or the trees that grew the sun and the moon. No big deal. What happened to it? Just f***ed off somewhere, but not before having a ton of babies. All the various giant spiders in Lord of the Rings. But it's immortal, so it's probably still out there somewhere. Oh, and by the way, it casually makes itself invisible sometimes. Spiders, man. That about wraps up our list about spiders, but it's time for one more thing. A friend recently got me into collecting graded cards. So here I'm going to show off my collection and provide commentary for a few specific cards. Favorite basketball player? I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to have a big 2024-2025 season, so I bought some of his cards cheap as an investment. And by some, I mean like 9. So hoping by the time this is out, that decision has aged well. Because as of recording, it hasn't. What a terrible picture. Ah, the goat. That will appreciate in value.